Welcome back to another explainer. Today we are diving into something pretty provocative. It completely flips our conventional understanding of communication right on its head. Think about it. What if everything we've ever been taught about being open, sharing our feelings, and being completely transparent, what if it's all actually a trap? According to the Machiavellian framework we're unpacking today, all that societal conditioning is actually just designed to keep us predictable and ultimately really easy to control. It's a huge departure from what most of us are used to hearing, so we're going to break down exactly how this argument is constructed. All right, let's jump right in.
The source material really does not pull any punches here. It boldly claims right out of the gate that you have been lied to since childhood. You know those popular modern mantras? Things like communication is key, or you need to speak your truth, or that total transparency makes you a good person? Yeah, those are directly challenged here. Instead of viewing these ideas as virtues, this framework argues that they're basically a form of social conditioning used as a weapon against you. The argument is that the world doesn't actually reward your transparency, it just exploits it.
So here is the core conflict. On one side, we've got this heavy societal expectation of transparency. It's the ingrained idea that explaining yourself is always the right thing to do. But on the other side, we have the Machiavellian view, silence as power. The text argues that every single time you open your mouth to explain yourself, to justify your actions, or even just to react to an insult, you are basically treating dialogue like a confession. And by doing that, you're bleeding your own power and just voluntarily handing your authority right over to someone else.
That brings us to phase one of this framework, the lie of transparency.
I want you to think about the absolute danger of needing to be understood. According to the text, it puts you in what is called the defendant position. When you over-explain your reasoning, usually hoping that your critics will finally understand and respect you, you inadvertently place yourself entirely beneath them. You literally hand them the gavel and give them the power to judge you. The source emphasizes that true authority rarely, if ever, explains itself. It simply sets a boundary and acts.
To counter this deeply ingrained habit we all have of over-explaining, the text says a really committed shift in mindset is required. It actually asks you to adopt a specific binding affirmation. My silence is power. This isn't just supposed to be some catchy phrase. It's meant to be a binding contract with your future self. It acts as a psychological anchor, reminding you that choosing not to speak is an active, powerful choice, definitely not a passive weakness. Moving right along, let's look at phase two, mastering your reactions.
Think about how you naturally react to disrespect. Usually it's instant, right? Your face tightens up, your voice gets a little louder, and your emotions are just completely exposed. Well, manipulators rely on that exact immediate emotional data to control you. But the text contrasts this with the strategic operator, who takes a completely different approach. They use decoupled emotion and a deliberately delayed response. By flat-out refusing to flinch, they completely cut off the manipulator's supply of emotional data.
And this is where we get the tactical pause. Here is exactly how it works in practice. Step 1, you face a provocation. Step 2, you completely delay your response. You mentally decouple what you are feeling on the inside from what you are showing on the outside. Step 3, by offering absolutely zero immediate emotional feedback, you force the provocateur to question their own move. This one simple pause effectively flips the script in any confrontation, leaving the attacker totally off balance.
To really anchor this concept, the text points to a piece of historical Machiavellian philosophy. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Think about it. The fool reacts instantly, and then, much later,
eventually realizes they shouldn't have shown their hand. The wise person? They skip the reaction altogether and immediately adopt the stillness that the fool only manages to find when it's way too late. Now let's shift gears into phase 3, disarming the manipulator.
So now we're moving from internal control to external maneuvers, actively disrupting other people's behavioral patterns. The reality is, average people are absolutely terrified of silence. When a conversation pauses, what happens? They panic. They rush to fill the void with nervous chatter and oversharing. But the strategist knows that silence acts as a psychological mirror. By remaining perfectly quiet, you literally force the other person to look at their own reflection. The sheer discomfort of that silence causes people to project their own insecurities and reveal their hidden motives. You don't even have to interrogate them. You just sit in the stillness and let them talk until they inadvertently destroy their own position.
We all know these kinds of people, right? Total energy vampires who just feed on drama. Now, the text argues that weak people believe they have to argue with these vampires to prove their innocence, but arguing is just stepping onto their battlefield. The proposed solution? Starve them. Meet their calculated insults or guilt trips with absolute cold nothingness. This prevents their psychological loop from ever closing. You basically deny their conflict the oxygen it needs to survive, which leaves them totally exhausted and completely powerless.
Doing this requires a major behavioral shift. To reprogram your identity away from being someone who is easily provoked or easily figured out, the source suggests adopting a second mindset. I am completely unreadable. The goal here is to consciously step into a persona of absolute emotional opacity.
Which brings us to phase 4, the power of unpredictability. The source cites another Machiavellian rule here. A wise ruler should never reveal all his intentions. See, society pushes so hard for transparency because transparent people are, well, they're predictable, and predictable people are easily farmed for reactions. If someone knows your exact blueprint, they can outmaneuver you in a heartbeat. Becoming a black box forces people to guess your next move. Being unreadable makes you unpredictable, and in this framework, being unpredictable equals being powerful. Let's talk about the concept of closure. The average person is completely obsessed with it, often staying in arguments or interactions until their emotional energy is just completely drained, and everything is neatly resolved. The Machiavellian mind, however, views this desperate need for closure as a massive liability that just exposes weakness. Instead, the strategist utilizes the power of unfinished interactions and the incredible strength of simply walking away. By walking away while an interaction is still unresolved, you create this really intense psychological tension. Human minds absolutely hate unfinished business. The strategy is to starve them of your presence at the exact right moment, forcing them to mentally obsess over you. As the text puts it, scarcity is the only currency that never loses worth. Finally, we reach phase 5, silence as true authority.
Look at the common social dynamic of the loudest person in the room. You know the type. People desperately trying to assert dominance, constantly performing for attention. But the text observes that the result of speaking constantly is that your words just get diluted into cheap background noise. Real dominance, the author argues, is built in the shadows. When you practice rare speech, your words suddenly carry massive psychological weight.
When you actually practice rare speech, 3 specific things happen. First, people naturally listen a lot closer when you finally do speak. Second, they hesitate before crossing your boundaries simply because they don't know your exact capabilities. And third, they automatically assume you know far more than you're actually revealing. Silence communicates an unspoken standard, one that commands instant fear and respect without you ever having to raise your voice. Now, there is a pretty stern warning attached to all of this in the text. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. To seal your commitment to stepping out of that matrix of social conditioning, the author leaves you with this final anchor. My silence speaks volumes.
And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. We've explored the aggressive dismantling of open communication, the mechanics of the tactical pause, and the whole concept of becoming a black box to starve manipulators of their power. It's definitely a fascinating, albeit pretty dark, lens through which to view human interaction. So, having reviewed these arguments, you kind of have to ask yourself about your own daily communication habits. Will you remain predictable, constantly handing over your gavel by over-explaining, or will you choose to experiment with the power of the tactical pause?